everything. So, like every night, first encounter with Srila Prabhupada, Maharaj born in 14 verse 1951, Auckland, New Zealand. And regarding his education, he was into King's School and King's College in Auckland. Maharaj was initially a journalist and having very deep interest in the philosophy. So therefore, he studies in Auckland University. And I have heard Maharaj lectures, very deep, very profound philosophy Maharaj is giving with a very deep pastime of Radha Krishna. And Maharaj written book also regarding Vrindavan Govardhan. It's a very beautiful book. So at the first encounter with Srila Prabhupada, yeah. So Srila Prabhupada, Maharaj met on the 14th April 1972 at the university, and a movement that deeply influenced by Srila Prabhupada, and he introduced him to Hare Krishna movement. Yeah. So then after that, Maharaj moved to temple and he joined Krishna temple on 7th January 1973 and got first initiation in September 1973 by HH Bhakti Swami Prabhupada. And Prabhupada gave Maharaj name Raghuveer Das at that time. And then second initiation in a London service. So he received Brahman initiation in 1974 and he president of the Bhakti Vedanta Trust and assistant Bhakti Vedanta manner. And yeah, next Prabhu can do this. Also, like Maharaj was the temple president in Cantonese, 1980 to 90, his services in South Africa and Renunciation. So Maharaj was the temple president in Cantonese, 1980 to 1982, and Maharaj built a wonderful temple, the Radha temple there, and the grand opening was 1985. So a beautiful temple in Africa. Devadeva Prabhu used to send me Maharaj that wonderful deities video in the temple. And then Maharaj took sannyas and then he became the Bhakti Chaitanya and giving Maharaj association world devotee and Maharaj's leadership in education and publications. Maharaj was a GBC and he joined GBC in 1998 and oversees the region like Africa and Europe and Russia. And also Maharaj like educational contribution, like he is head of BCIS Education Russia School of Bhakti, taught Bhakti Shastri degree online, graduating 412 students in 2021. And Maharaj, as I said, that Maharaj written wonderful book on Govardhan, authorized books like Govardhan. It's a wonderful illustrations, wonderful pictures, and very reference from all the scriptures, the Goswamis, literatures. I read this book personally and I recommended it. And whenever I do the Govardhan Parikrama, I use that book, Maharaj. So thank you so much. So little about Maharaj. Maharaj has a lot of contributions, but now we want to hear that Maharaj has less time. He has to go back to Asana. And so let's welcome by loudly chanting Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. So Maharaj, this devotee in front of you, we have like here, discover your permanent course. That is for the like corporate people here. And out of 1,000 devotees, we selected this 25 devotees for to make them good preacher, giving them the profound knowledge about the Srila Prabhupada books. And we are training them with the Vaishnava cultures and sharings, I mean, like our Acharya's histories and contributions. So this kind of training, very scientific training we are giving them so that they can, with the next one, at the moment, Srila Prabhupada, by engaging all this wonderful devotee, so we need your blessings. Yeah, thank you, Maharaj. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Prabhu. Do we know how to change the refresh? Malam hai. Because it looks a bit weird, you know. Anyway, whatever. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihare Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihare Gopi Jana Ballava Giri Bharadhare Gopi Jana Ballava Giri Bharadhare Yashodanandana Raja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Raja Janaranjana Yamunatira Vanachare Yamunatira Vanachare Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihare Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihare Gopi Jana Ballava Giri Bharadhare Gopi Jana Ballava Giri Bharadhare Yashodanandana Raja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Raja Janaranjana Yamunatira Vanachare Yamunatira Vanachare Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihare Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihare Prabhupada, Jai Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jai Prabhupada. Jai Prabhupada, Jai Prabhupada. Prabhupada, Jai Prabhupada. Jai Jai Prabhupada, 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 Jai Jai Prabhupada, 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 Janishvad Varnahans Perivrajikcharis Tadistasismad His Divine Grace HH Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki ISKCON Samstapakacharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Anantakoti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Prem Sekahasi Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Shri Radha Krishna Gop Govnath Shamkund Radhakund Giri Govardhan Ki Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Shri Mayapur Dham Ki Shri Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Shri Radha Damodar Ki Shri Yashoda Damodar Ki Shri Gonitai Ki Shri Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Devi Ki Srila Prabhupada Ki Shri Harinam Sankirtan Ki Gopremanande. All glories to their Somo devotees. All glories to their Somo devotees. All glories to their Somo devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hare Krishna, devotees. So, हमारा program क्या है? मालूम नहीं. Questions, is it? Prashna, like that? Or I should say something?
You can take any topic, Maharaj.
Take any topic.
And then we'll have question answer.
Okay. Okay. TK. So I'll say a few words about something. I'll just have to think of what that will be. Huh? Oh, Gopastami. Yes, today's Gopastami, that's right. So I'll say a few words about Gopastami. Then Prabhuji told me and ordered me that you were all going to ask questions. That's what he said last night as we were driving from the airport. So I don't know if you have thought of questions yet, but if not, I think you should think of them fairly quickly. TK. Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Yes, so devotees. Today's Gopastami. Everyone understands English okay? Okay. Yeah, all right, good. I speak a little Hindi. मैं थोड़ा हिंदी बोल सकता हूँ, किंतु मेरी हिंदी बहुत खराब है. So better if I just speak in English. Today's Gopastami. What a special day, very sacred day. And yes, well, you know, there's a special pastime which I assume you're quite familiar with, but I'll talk about anyway, is that, okay, right. Yes, that on this day, Lord Krishna, well, Srimati Radharani and Lord Krishna, of course, they like so much to meet together, and I mean, not just like so much, but it's their lives to just be together and meet together as much as possible. But as you know, in Vraja Leela, there are so many obstacles to Radha and Krishna meeting. And one of the obstacles, you could say, is named Jatila. Have you heard of Jatila? Lali, you heard of Jatila? You didn't? She is like, what's the term in Hindi? I don't know. The original, Saz bhi kabhi bahuti. I've been living with Hindu people for 50 years, or more than 50 years, actually. Yeah. Saz, yeah, the original mother-in-law. She's a tough lady. And, you know, on a certain level, it looks like she is anti-Krishna, like really strongly anti-Krishna. And normally if people are anti-Krishna, then you say they're demons, right? Oh, yes. But she's not a demon, she's a devotee. So what is the meaning of her being a devotee if she's so staunchly anti-Krishna? Is that she is trying, as a very dutiful mother-in-law, she is trying to protect her daughter-in-law, who is Srimati Radharani. So like this, she is a staunch devotee of Srimati Radharani in a certain bhakti. She is not sadhana bhakti. She's on a higher level. Yes, anyway, so, and her service in terms of Radharani is to try to protect her from any embarrassing situations which might arise through some young man other than her husband kind of, you know, trying to meet with her and associate with her. Yes, so, and therefore her service in terms of Radha and Krishna is to be an obstacle to their meeting, which sounds bad, but actually what she does in effect is just heighten the mood of excitement in the relationship between Radha and Krishna, which makes their relationship deeper and more beautiful and more wonderful and more glorious, actually, worthy of celebration, rather than sort of us becoming anti-Jatila. So, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, I read somewhere years and years ago, he said there was sort of an interview, Radharani was kind of interviewed, that, you know, you and Krishna, you have your natural relationship, pure relationship. But there are all these obstacles, particularly in the forms of different people. And Jatila is the leader. She's known as Jatila because she has a big jat. You know what a jat is? Big hair, you know. When someone, and you get it with men too, like these Naga Babas and people like that. They just grow their hair until they've got so much hair, but it gets in the way. So therefore they try and put it up or somewhere to get it out of the way. And in order to keep it up, they mix it with like glue or tree resin. You know what I mean? Which is kind of liquid, but then it dries and it hardens. So she's got a big jat, the biggest, so she's called Jatila. So anyway, Radharani was interviewed and the interviewer said, you know, you and Krishna, you want to be together so much, and practically that's all you do. You try to come together, and you know, sometimes you are together actually, but then there's some interruption in the form of somebody coming like Jatila, or sometimes Mukara, Radharani's grandmother, and others like Abhimanyu, her husband. They are like human obstacles. So the interviewer said, you know, wouldn't it be better if the two of you could just be married? And then you can be together 24/7. In fact, if you are not together, people will criticize you. If somehow you're spending, you know, some substantial periods of time away from each other, people may criticize you. So wouldn't it be better if you could just be married and be together? And Srimati Radharani said, no, I think it would just be boring. We would sit together and look at each other, and I would say, Krishna, I love you. And Krishna would say, I love you too. And I would say, I love you very much. And Krishna would say, I love you very much too. And I would say, I love you very, very much. And Krishna would say, you get the idea. And it would just be boring. So it's better like this. And it's a little bit of a long story, the discussion that's there. But she says, she comes to sort of the conclusion of the discussion. And Srimati Radharani says, actually, our relationship, my relationship with Krishna, our relationship together is like a very good chutney. I'm sure ladies particularly, and I'm sure some of the men also know how to make a chutney. But you know, the definition of a very good chutney is that it is so hot. It's just very difficult to eat. But it's so sweet, it's irresistible. This is the definition of a good chutney. Like a first-class chutney. Yeah. So our relationship is like that. It's so difficult that sometimes it's just like it's almost too much. But it's so sweet, we just cannot stop, and we do not stop, and we will not. And it's just the focal point of our lives. So anyway, what I'm getting at there is that Srimati Radharani was Srimati Radharani at Yavat. You've all been to Yavat? Yavat? Job. Well, they say Job or Yob or something. But Yavat is the traditional name. You know that place? What happened to you people? Anyway, you should go there because it's nice. It's extremely nice, actually. And the people running there's a number of temples, people running the main temple up on top of the hill. They're basically very nice. So anyway, so Jatila was keeping Radharani effectively as a prisoner. She just wouldn't let her go out. And so Radharani was stuck. But Krishna was, just so extremely enthusiastic or determined somehow to meet her, that he would just do all sorts of strategies to somehow get in or get her out. And there are many stories about that, which we won't really go into now. But on this day, the Gopastami day, a special one of those pastimes happened, is that they were, Krishna and the cowherd boys, as I recall, they were in the Varshana area, Vilaskar. You know where Vilaskar is? Anyway, it's one of the hills, the 5 hills of Varshana. It's the hill which is the head of Lord Vishnu. And so Krishna's there with cowherd boys. Krishna's lamenting, he's disappointed that, what can we do? We must do something so that Radharani and I can meet. So it was Gopastami day, the second Astami of Kartik, and Subal. Now, Subal is an interesting character, one of the main cowherd boys, very well-known figure amongst the cowherd boys. Subal, although he's a boy, he looks really like Srimati Radharani. This is described by our acharyas. He really looks like a male version of Srimati Radharani or something along those lines. So they decided that Subal, what you do is disguise. No. What you do is, you go in to Yavat. Jatila will be on the front door. She is the security person, a one-woman security team when it comes to guarding Radharani. And she'll be there on the door and she'll ask you, what do you want? What are you doing here? I know who you are. You're one of Krishna's friends. What do you want? And Subal said, you know what? One of my calves, little calf, ran away and came running down this way. And I suspect she has come inside, maybe when you had your back turned, come inside and is now sort of mixed with the calves inside. So if you don't mind, I'd like to go in and try to find my calf. So Jatila said, oh, all right then, if you have to. And she's like very negative in a certain sense, because, you know, she's suspicious, and rightly so. So in goes Subal. And he meets with Srimati Radharani and the gopis and explains the plan. The plan is that he and Srimati Radharani will exchange clothes. And so Radharani will put on his cowherd boy clothes and pick up one calf and go out saying, yes, look, I found my calf. And so Jatila, and she'll think, and Radharani will keep her back to Jatila. And in this way, she will escape. And Subal will stay in Radharani's clothes, inside, in Yavat, until further notice or something. So that's what they did. So on this day, at least in many of the temples in the Vrindavan area, the deity of Radharani is dressed in what they call Subal Vesh, cowherd boy clothes. And as a result, in many of those temples, Radharani's lotus feet are visible on this day, because cowherd boys, you know, they don't cover their feet. You know, they're kind of very informal in their dress. And we used to do that in ISKCON, although, you know, our deity worship ministry are very sort of, you know, staunch in their own way. They have found quotations from Prabhupada where Prabhupada says Radharani's lotus feet should never be shown. So therefore, I mean, maybe in some temples they still show the lotus feet, but as far as I know, generally, her lotus feet are not shown. So like this, they exchanged clothes. Subal, or no, it's actually Radharani, in Subal's actual clothes that he was wearing, that he came in with, picked up one of her calves and walked out, and even their voices are somewhat similar, although he's a boy. But he's like a boy. And young boys, you know, it's only up to a certain age that the voice starts to become like an adult voice. Up to that time, it's kind of higher pitched voice. So Radharani went out with her back to Jatila, who's still sitting in the doorway. And Jatila said, so you found your calf? And Radharani nodded his head and said, yes, and all right, now go. Jatila said, so off she went, dressed as Subal. And she arrived there at, I think it's, anyway, wherever Krishna was and the cowherd boys, but they, because she's wearing Subal's clothes, they thought that it's Subal who has, because he explained what he was going to try to do, but she looked so much like him, they thought he has failed in the mission and he's just come back and Radharani's still there. So anyway, so Krishna, so Radharani dressed as Subal thought, let me test him to see how sort of faithful he is to me. So in Subal's voice, she said, yeah, you know, so difficult with Jatila. Failed in the mission, sorry about that. Better luck next time, something like that. And then Radharani dressed as Subal, who's also sort of looking away so Krishna doesn't see clearly enough. Radharani said, so, like as if she's Subal, shall I bring Chandravali then? Because, you know, if you know the Leelas, she is the opposition amongst the Gopi society. Yeah. She's the opposition. Actually, according to Srila Rupa Goswami, she is the sister of Srimati Radharani. They're both daughters of the sun. So anyway, yeah, Radharani said, so anyway, look, I can go and get Chandravali. You know, if you'd like to meet a nice girl. And Krishna said, no, I don't want to meet her. Only Radharani will do. So he passed the test. And then Radharani, dressed as Subal, revealed, I am actually Radharani. And they had pastimes together. And we don't know how exactly it worked. At least I don't know. And I've not come across how it worked when Radharani returned. But I don't know exactly. Maybe, shouldn't speculate, I suppose, but maybe like the next morning she would go to cook for Krishna from Yavat to Nandagram. So maybe Subal dressed as her went, and Radharani dressed as Subal came and they met on the way and changed clothes again. I don't know how it worked, but somehow or other Subal spent the entire day there in Yavat, and Jatila would come and check what's going on and get Radharani to do things because she's the daughter-in-law, and therefore she has to do things for the mother-in-law. But somehow or other it all worked. Radha and Krishna met, Subal didn't get caught, and as they say, they all lived happily ever after. Literally. So there you go. That's the Gopastami Leela in a nutshell. Hare Krishna. Shri Gopastami Ki Jai. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. So devotees, Kitna Bajai. Oh, okay. Well, you know what they told me? Maybe it was Prabhuji, but it was somebody told me that the devotees in Gurugram are very intelligent and thoughtful, and therefore they have many questions because they're just so interested in different aspects of everything in Krishna consciousness. That's what I got told by reliable sources. So does anyone have a question, comment, or about anything in life in Krishna consciousness? Prabhu.
Thank you so much for this wonderful material pastimes. My question is especially how to develop affection, love for these pastimes of Lord Shri Krishna. Most of the time we are there in principle and rules and regulations we talk about more about that. But getting into leaders like all these different leaders, they having that much love and affection for that. How do we get to that?
That's a good question. Right, how to sort of develop an attraction or love for these pastimes. Well, yes, we are in sadhana bhakti, and so we do need to be careful. Being careful is one of the main sort of parts of the consciousness of a sadhaka in, well, particularly Vaidhi sadhana bhakti. It has to be there. Otherwise, I assume you must know, like particularly in Bengal, but also places like Radhakund, where there's like Bengali Gaudiya Vaishnav of a type, sort of lot of people, and other places where, and it's not only the Bengalis also, it's the Hindis also, and Gujaratis sometimes too, that they get into these things, but in ways their attitudes are materially tainted or contaminated. So they introduce into the idea of these leelas just material, oftentimes or mainly boy-girl types of ideas, that sort of thing. And Prabhupada, there was an incident where Prabhupada, I can't remember where, it may have been in England, with one scholar, like a white man, but he was like an Indology, like really studying Indian culture and Vaishnavism and Gaudiya Vaishnavism in an academic way. Like he wasn't chanting rounds or, he had no intention of becoming a devotee. He was just interested in an academic way. So the man approached Prabhupada and said that, there's this Radha Krishna Leela. This is not a subject suitable for brahmacharis, right? Like, ha ha ha, that sort of attitude. And Prabhupada replied, actually, only brahmacharis should study Radha Krishna Leela. Or at least people who have a truly celibate type of attitude, which includes grihastha brahmacharis and sannyasis. Sannyasis are sort of like brahmacharis. Yes. So the thing is this, that, at least particularly initially, we should study Prabhupada's books really in depth. Yes. And just all of them. There was a group of devotees many years ago while Prabhupada was still present in Los Angeles, and they became known as the Gopi Bhava Club. I don't know if you've heard about them, but they're quite, they were young, new devotees, but they got the idea that, yes, Radha Krishna Leela, this is the highest, so we must focus on it. So they would meet regularly and just discuss Radha Krishna Leela. And Prabhupada found out and he chastised them very heavily. Yeah, really heavily. But in the course of doing that, Prabhupada said, what was it? We do not want to boycott the gopis. Prabhupada used that term, boycott. Like, we will not touch them because, we're just sadhakas, so we won't have anything to do with them. So at least initially, and, initially could mean quite a number of years. We should just read, obviously chant our rounds and do all that sort of thing, but we should really regularly read Prabhupada's books, including the books which deal with the Vrindavan Leelas. Then, like Chaitanya Charitamrita, there's quite a lot there. But really stick with Prabhupada's books, because the problem is that if we, or anyone, but let's just say we, start reading books of some of our acharyas where they really focus on these leelas, but if we're not ready enough for it, then it'll have the same sort of effect on us. We'll become confused. And, particularly amongst certain people who pass as Gaudiya Vaishnavas, but they're Sahajiyas, they adopt practices like a man and a woman come together. They're supposedly Vaishnavas, but the man says, I'll be Krishna, you be Radha, and we will basically have a materialistic male-female relationship. So actually Prabhupada, not a lot, but there are definitely places where Prabhupada was asked, should we or can we read the books of the previous acharyas, like meaning particularly these types of books? And Prabhupada said, yes, not just that we can, but we should read them. But then you have to be ready enough. So how are you going to tell? Oftentimes the best way to sort of address the subject is to ask your spiritual master. You think, I'm ready to read, say some specific book. It can be. Yeah. And take it like that. That's, or, sometimes, well, if your spiritual master, like Srila Gopal Krishna Maharaj, who was very, very dear friend of mine, if your spiritual master's left this world already, obviously you can't ask him. But, of course you can pray to him for some help to understand. But then, when it comes to like specific questions, where you need specific answers, in the absence of one's spiritual master, then one should have a senior devotee, or maybe a few senior devotees, who are close to you, who know you, who sort of understand you, and they're qualified, who you can ask these sorts of questions to. Yeah, because if you want to sort of dive in the deep end, just, based on your own decision, that's a kind of a risky business. But yeah, so like that, it's a step-by-step thing. First, we really need to familiarize ourselves, you can say, or just read at least the main books of Prabhupada a few times, like maybe 3 or 4 times. It's like Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita, Nectar of Devotion, these 4 books Prabhupada emphasized. Yeah. A few times, and then we may be ready enough.
So, Maharaj, what about the Sri Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, this book?
Yeah.
Because this is again.
It's Srimad Bhagavatam, yeah.
Bhagavatam only. And as it is recommended that when we complete 9th canto and then after we enter into that.
Good.
When it comes to Krishna book, the pastime is there all over.
Yeah, that's true. Prabhupada did translated and commented in that type of way as a summary study, specifically because he was concerned that he might leave this world. He was working on the Bhagavatam for years, but he was concerned he might leave this world before he did the 10th canto, which is, very sensitive in, certain areas, particularly the earlier chapters. So therefore he did that, not as he normally did, and as he was doing with other Bhagavatam books, but in that summary study sort of way. Yeah, but Prabhupada specifically mentioned those 4 books. You may know in about, 10 verses before the end of Madhya Lila, approximately. You can have a look and see, it's there to be seen. Prabhupada says, well, the discussion is about Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami is saying that, you should study these leelas and these literatures like you eat, like they're foodstuffs. Yeah. And if you don't, then you'll lose your strength. Yeah. And you'll sort of physically fall down. So there's a purport there, short purport, where Prabhupada says that we've given our books, all of my followers must read them, and particularly mentions these 4. All of my followers must read these 4 books. And if they don't, they will end up eating and sleeping and fall down from Krishna consciousness. It's there. Just look, last, chapter 25 of Madhya Lila. Just look through the last 10 or several verses, and you'll see it there in the purport. Prabhu, yes.
I'm still at the initial stage of asking, so this question might sound a bit childish, if I may say so. So I've heard of a few pastimes of Gopi Krishna, and this is more like a benchmark of emotion, their surrender. And this particular pastime, clearly, I see Subala as a hero here. Not a hero, but a very prominent character. So what can we learn from Subala's unwavering devotion and loyalty? I have a basic understanding, but I would like to hear from you.
Okay. Well, let me start by saying this is the month of Damodar, the pastime of Yashoda Damodar. And normally, even like Janmashtami, Ashtami was recently, Gosha was very recently. Normally we celebrate these pastimes and focus on them just for the one day, that, the specific day. But this pastime of Yashoda Damodar, we focus on for 1 month, every day, which means something. It would tend to indicate, at least tend to indicate something. The example of Mother Yashoda with Krishna in the Damodar Lila is of extreme importance in the sense of her, out of concern and love for Krishna, wanting to correct him so he doesn't grow up to become a criminal or something like that, wanting to serve him as a mother serves by training. Yeah, and the extreme determination she showed, first of all in just catching him, but it didn't end there. Then she had to tie him, and in both cases it was very challenging. It was very difficult just to catch him, and then when she caught him, it was very difficult to tie him. But in both cases, not just one, she showed that devotional concern. You could say, if we sort of express it in our terms, the sort of dedication to her prescribed service, that she was just going to do it, and that was all there was to it. Literally, she would not let anything stop her from doing her service. That sort of lesson we need to learn. That's, it's like a very foundational lesson in Krishna consciousness. Whether your service is distributing Prabhupada's books, or cooking, or maybe you have a family and, training the family members how to be devotees, or whether you're just cleaning the temple room, or whatever your service is. When you've got a service, prescribed service, given to you through like the authoritative line, then that should and must be like the focus of your life, your life's mission. Your service might change after a while. You may be asked to become the temple president or something, or whatever, something else. I remember my first service when I joined the temple in London. As you heard, I don't know if you caught it, but 7th of January 1973, I became the pot washer. And we were like 50 or 60 devotees, full-time, living in the temple. So there were many pots, big pots. And because we were very poor, we had no hot water. We just had cold water. And this is in England, London in winter, because January means winter. And we had no soap for washing the pots. We just had these sort of metal pads, which we just rubbed the pots with. Wow. And it took hours to clean these big pots, many of which were sort of black. Boy. So after a while, even though I was really trying, they could see I couldn't manage it, so they gave me an assistant. So my service changed. From pot washer, I was now head pot washer. Step up in the world. My first, promotion in Krishna consciousness. And it helped. But anyway, so yeah, the lesson in this Damodar Leela is of such extreme importance. I would advise or suggest we learn that lesson. We rarely learn that lesson from Krishna Leela first. And Subal, he knew it was risky. If Jatila had caught him, she would have beaten him up. She wouldn't have just shouted at him and thrown him out. If he came in And if she found out what he's trying to do, she would have got violent with him. And she's a big, tough girl, lady. So he was very brave, very bold to do that, and to stay in the house for however long he had to stay in the house till Radharani came back. Sure. So maybe from that we can learn the lesson of being bold and brave in Krishna's service. But, at the same time, because he looks like her, they speak similarly. It wasn't like you or me trying to imitate that we're Radharani. It wouldn't work. There was a very good chance it would work. So even though it was risky, it was a calculated risk. And it worked out in the end. So sometimes we have to do services which are risky. Yeah. I remember in the 70s, in Prabhupada's time, I was distributing books in Northern Ireland, and the Civil War was going on. It was a full-scale civil war. And, every week, we would usually see between 2 and 4 bombs go off in different cities we're moving around distributing books. Yeah, it was risky. And a few times the army came. They saw some IRA people coming in, and they, screamed at us, "Get down!" And we had to just get down on the street. Yeah. And we met a few IRA people who didn't appreciate us at all. Wow. They could have become violent. But we were just on the main street of some city in Northern Ireland. So it was calculated risk, and it worked out because we distributed loads of books. We had a saying, 100 a day keeps Maya away. It means if you distribute 100 of Prabhupada's books a day, you'll be Krishna conscious. And I would say there's a lot of truth in it. Yeah. So we shouldn't take stupid risks. There was this one lady, disciple of Prabhupada, Chladni, Devi Dasi. If you look her up on Google, you'll find the story there. She went to preach in Liberia, which is West Africa. And at the time, it was in a state of civil war, but really they had armies fighting with each other openly on battlefields. But she somehow or other got to know the leader of the whoever was the current government party. It may have been John Doe. Anyway, it was this big man, really big man, who I think became the president after he had killed all the other people on the other side. So she started to preach to him, and he expressed some interest. So she thought, oh, very good. So then she tried to preach to him to stop the revolution, and really got on his case, what you're doing is wrong. So what did he do? One day him personally and some of his close people rounded her up and a few other devotees and killed them. And they killed her. Yeah, you can read about it. A couple of the boys, because there was quite a few boys there, devotees, a couple of them survived. And so they told the whole story. But that's taking a risk for Krishna, but it's not in a very intelligent, very suitable way. How's that?
many times, if I may, you can help me with one more answer. I'm getting really later.
Well, एक minute, BTAR. Maybe someone else has, because we don't have much time. But I can just say, you said something at the beginning, I didn't catch the word. You're new, sort of young in Krishna consciousness.
Yeah, because I can see senior devotees in front of them. I am like one speck of.
Okay, well, that's good. Yeah, well, I have been a resident, at least in ISKCON, for a little over 50 years, coming up to 52 years. And I consider myself a new devotee, a young devotee, because there's a lot to learn. Gee, it's never ending. And the more you learn, the more you realize there's even more to learn. So keep that attitude, you'll be okay. Anyway, you'll have a good chance. Prabhuji.
Maharaj, my question is like with respect to, because this is a class of 7 leaders, so we talk with different people outside the Krishna consciousness conscious world.
Right.
So what are the best practices that we should be following when we talk with people in the corporate side, like when we go to offices, we talk with people about Krishna consciousness. So whether we should be talking about what we do in our day-to-day life, say we get up early, we chant our rounds, we try to follow the regulative principles.
Right.
So all those things, should we try to talk about them, talk about these in the beginning,
Okay.
or there has to be some way of, because
Okay. Now that's a very relevant point in this context of our gathering. Yeah, Prabhupada didn't talk about he didn't even mention that there were regulative principles, or that you should chant a certain, what to speak of 16 rounds, but even, a certain amount. He was just saying in the very beginning stages of takeaway shop or hamburger bar. And one day Prabhupada was walking up the road to do something, and he just happened to look in the window, and there were some of his devotees sitting there eating hamburgers. And they were not veggie burgers. And they certainly were not like piyaj, nay, or no onions, no garlic. And he saw them, they saw him, and they waved to him. Like, how nice to see you. And when they all got back and Prabhupada got back, he said to them, he didn't get into it like, what were you doing, you idiots, or something like that. Prabhupada just said, we devotees, we normally don't eat meat. And so they said, oh, really? Oh, okay. So, when you're dealing with these people, when you're just dealing with people who are not devotees, who are really not devotees, but, you feel you want to try to help them to move in that direction at least, you should try, first thing really, generally, is to try to, 2 things. Find sort of elements in Krishna consciousness which you feel would be attractive to them in terms of the type of person they are. And then try to encourage them to, particularly if they have a certain type of specialty, like professional, like, a very good one is a doctor. It's sort of fairly easy to engage doctors in devotional service by, getting them to help devotees medically. Others, may be more difficult depending on what their particular focus is, but try and see how to engage them in some Krishna conscious activity which they're going to which will at least be pay for them. Or preferably, like, if you don't have proper bookkeeping, financial records, which in ISKCON is not unusual, then if you find someone who's not necessarily like a chartered accountant, but say a professional bookkeeper, if they have a bit of time, they could just come and do a little bit of simple bookkeeping. So, and like that. Try to engage people in activities which they're already doing, if possible. But if, like a manager, it may be difficult if you try and engage them in managing devotees, because it's a whole different thing to manage devotees. And either they'll burn out the devotees, or they'll burn out themselves and think, these devotees are just unmanageable, something like that. But find something which they can engage in terms of practical activity, and bring them in like that. And then you just have to kind of gauge when they're ready to start chanting. Many of them may be ready straight away, particularly if they're from Hindu backgrounds. Many of them may, but in the Western world, the great majority of just outright Westerners will not be ready initially to chant and follow regulative principles. Yeah. So one has to use one's intelligence, use common sense. But I'm sure the problem with common sense is that it's not so common. Yeah. It's a particular type of intelligence. Yeah.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Hey.
Just one very follow-up question on this, which is connected to this. Like when we go to offices, and sometimes we have to go out with the team, say for dinner or some kind of a get together. So there, if we don't eat something or we don't become a part of their, that party and all. So what should we be saying? Because if we say that we don't eat this, and so it doesn't give a negative impression about our society.
Well, yeah, and we as much as possible, if we're in such a situation where this may happen or from time to time, we should find out first of all, where there are devotee restaurants, which are nice. Otherwise, where there are restaurants which may not be devotee, but they're actually able to do nice, no onions, no garlic, vegetarian food. It's, you got to be a little careful, and you got to be careful. But that's what you should do. And because the thing is, it's one thing, you can always ask, could I just have a salad? Just raw. You don't need to do anything to it. Just raw lettuce and this and that. But, for a lot of Indian people are not into salads at all. And even Prabhupada was not into salads. Yeah. Yeah. In a kind of of a broad sense, then you get that and tell those others who are the meat eaters that, actually this is vegetarian, but it's really nice. And maybe give them a little, and then they may see, wow, you're right, it is really nice. And in that way, they may become a little interested. Yeah. But we can't obviously we can't compromise our principles, certainly. We had a devotee in London His name was Jai Hari Das in Prabhupada's time. And he was cultivating the big rock stars. He knew the Beatles, the Rolling Stones. I don't know if you've heard of them. The Rolling